On that note, I'll call to order the Finance and Labor Relations Subcommittee. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof? None noted. Item 3, we don't have delegations. Item 4 is a report of the Stratford Economic Enterprise Development Corporation. Tony, welcome.
Thank you. So, thank you for kind of bringing these things back. I think we were paused for a while there while COVID was in full speed, and we did some email and reports that way, but it's nice to talk to everyone at the same time. So I'll be brief. I believe you have your report. Oh, sorry. I saw Councillor Ritzma's hand there.
Just questioning, Councillor Clifford, should we make a motion to hear the report? Okay. I will move that.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? All in favor? That's unanimous. Thanks, Martin.
Yep.
Would you like me to keep going? Sorry.
Yeah, please.
Okay. So very briefly, because I know you have a couple other reports to look at today. You've got our 2019 AGM in your package. It's a little awkward because it's a year ago and it's somewhat delayed. But our meeting does take place in June. Our board meeting does take place in June, and so this is the most recent Finance Committee meeting following that. So it's a pleasure for our board and myself to provide you with the information summarizing our year that was. A little surreal for sure to write a summary of the year while we were in the midst of what will turn out to be one of the, if not the largest economic impact we've ever seen, and that's COVID. But 2019 certainly had a lot for us to be pleased with. The investment in Seedco continues to bear fruit. Our land continues to sell. Our reputation internationally and certainly across Canada remains incredibly strong. The work that we were able to complete, certainly with our partners at Festival Hydro and Rhizome Networks on our Smart City work, was a really great way for us to talk about the things that Stratford does across many sectors. So we do focus often on our hospitality tourism, our manufacturing, but to really take a deep dive into autonomous vehicles and smart cities and the impact of those and how we can use those to promote to companies local and abroad was a really important exercise. Overall, financially, it was a break-even year. We were down a little bit in staffing as we had a maternity leave, and our business specialist moved into a part-time role. So that, of course, will pick back up now into 2020. We're a full complement of 6 full-time equivalent positions. We were able to visit our Japanese investments in 2019, and I can tell you that was received incredibly well. The former CEO of Festival Hydro joined us, and as we know, for our manufacturers, the overhead costs of labor and hydro are the two that often are the most impactful, and so it was an excellent opportunity to talk about the work that had been done in Stratford that was supporting those companies at their head offices in both Nagoya and in Tokyo. So I leave you with the 2019 report, and I'm happy to entertain any questions. Very quickly, with respect to where we're at in 2020, you've got some highlights there. Crane Avenue is serviced live and on the website. We've got interest in it already. The drone footage is up. The virtual reality street view viewer is on the website as well. And we're full steam ahead on doing virtual site tours. So the remainder of 2020 will be spent filming a site tour as though interested investors were able to come here and ride around in a car with us. It is a priority to have that experience available to companies and to interested parties to really see what the city has to offer, even though they can't come here directly and or drive around in a car with me like they would normally do. Our Small Business Enterprise Center team, I got to tell you, they are their magic at work. They have supported companies moving online through the digital accelerator program they ran, which I will say I believe was the baby that became the Google Main Street program. So from a timing perspective, our program wrapped, and then Google Main Street partnered with the federal government and did one even bigger. So I take full credit for that. It has nothing to do with us, but nonetheless, we did help 30 companies across Stratford, St. Mary's, and Perth County move into digital or improve their digital footprint. We also acknowledged, or that team also acknowledged, the unsurmountable in some ways, but incredibly significant emotional and psychological toll that COVID and pandemic has taken on our entrepreneurs, and partnered with the United Way and a number of local businesses, the Perth Community Futures, and developed the Mental Wellness for Entrepreneurship program. And that's run through Family Services Perth Huron. And I'm pleased to say that when we were getting low on funding for that, Kim McElroy and her team through Social Services were able to top that program up. So they will continue to be able to offer free mental wellness services to entrepreneurs in Stratford, Perth County, and St. Mary's through to the end of 2020. We would be remiss not to talk about task force activities. I will say that as a resident of this community, it has been my absolute privilege to be a part of these activities and this group. Never before have we seen 50 volunteers from every sector this community has to offer come together with the best of intentions and a real desire to roll up their sleeves and do good work. I give council and the city team the utmost respect and credit for special council meetings and, getting reports on agendas within 48 hours, processing patio permits at a speed we've never seen before. So when we write the book on this, I think Stratford will continue to shine, certainly throughout the province, and likely coast to coast for our response, our speed, and the creative ways that we came up with ways to support our businesses. I would again be remiss not to congratulate and applaud the creativity and the resilience of our businesses. These are Main Street storefront digital businesses, arts and culture sector, not-for-profits that have pivoted on a dime, have done everything they can to keep their people employed and to keep their doors open. And we should all, certainly applaud those efforts. It will be a very interesting, to say the least, remaining 2020. I don't think 2021 is going to be that much different. I can tell you that the task force has now taken the approach not only of continuing to support the destination activities that we've done so well, but a real long-term view. So community consultations, questions like, what does phase 2 mean to us as entrepreneurs, hospitality, manufacturing, social services? What do the 3 phases, phase 1 through 3, what kind of impacts will those have? And how can we then provide that information back to council and city leadership to help us be prepared as best as we can for what may come our way? So I'll leave it there. Please, through the chair, happy to answer any questions. But again, great privilege to have the job I have and to serve the people we serve. So.
Thanks, Joni. Any questions or comments for Joni? Martin. Your speaker's off, Martin.
Joni, I want to, on behalf of council, and you mentioned the word pivoting, and to you and your staff with CECO and Beth Stratford and your leadership in the task force, it's been a difficult time, but your team has certainly risen to the occasion. So congratulations. I know we've got a lot to do, but I think at times of this nature, we need to take a pause and acknowledge the positives. If not, we get swamped by them. So please pass along, our thanks to your team's work as well. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Graham, do you have your hand up? I'm sorry.
I was about to applaud Joni, that's all.
Great. Tony, I was going to ask on the Crane Avenue, are there any small lots in there, or I know there's still demand for small lots, and can you just bring us up to speed on what we're doing and or how we're facilitating the small entrepreneur that we certainly want to encourage in Stratford here?
So yes, thank you for that question through you, Councillor Clifford. Crane Avenue does not have small lots. It's a complex sort of pie-shaped property, and the best we could do were between 4 and 6 acre parcels for a total of just over 23. Right now, in the absence of city-owned small lots, less or sort of like the 1 and 2 acre parcels, we are actively promoting privately held parcels and making connections to those private owners. Often it's a design build lease or buy situation. But for Invest Stratford, our priorities are 50-50 city owned versus privately held. We want to find the best opportunity for the business looking to buy or expand or invest. There is a component of a project we're working on through the end of 2020 that will GIS map where existing landowners have additional acreage on their property that they could do something with, that they could build on, that they could, you know, help on from an infill perspective. So until such time as we have those city-owned small lots, you know, we're relying quite heavily on our private landowners, and for the most part, it does work. It works okay.
Martin.
I would like to move the staff recommendation that the Stratford Economic Enterprise Development Corporation, SECO Invest Stratford report dated September the 22nd, 2020 be received for information.
Okay, I don't think we need a seconder for that. But Joni, I was going to ask with the task force, with what we're hearing from areas in Toronto and whatnot, with this pandemic, with a second wave, it may not be a second wave, but do we have a concern in Stratford to encourage, like I know we've advertised in Kitchener and different places, but is there, what concerns do you have in the task force as far as bringing the pandemic back into our Stratford and Perth County?
So there is no question, and I think you'll likely hear from Zach Gribble on the tourism side as well in a little bit, there is no question that is a very delicate balance between encouraging commerce and often through tourism activities and the health and safety of our own residents and business owners and you know, obviously with school going back in and all of those things. So it is a very, very delicate balance. I can tell you that certainly through the efforts of the City Centre Committee and the BIA, they have provided incentives for downtown businesses to purchase PPE and plexiglass. They've done hand sanitizers and masks. Many businesses have taken a very measured approach to reopening and to allowing individuals back inside their businesses. So I think that I will say this, our entrepreneurs and our business owners are absolutely leading the way in showing us how best to stay safe and limiting unsafe transactions as best as they can. It is a risk, there is no question, and I would be lying if I said we shouldn't acknowledge it. We absolutely should. I think, you know, the provincial leadership will help us in terms of how HPPH or the Huron-Perth Public Health can offer guidance as well. And really following their lead is going to be critically important. It's not a great time moving into a fall and winter season when it gets cold. And of course, our patio programming is going to need to wrap up here in the next 60 days or less. I highly encourage, you know, all of us to think about takeout and think about online purchasing and all of those things, and to make the best choice for each individual business and each individual family.
Thanks, Joni. Oh, we have a motion on the floor. Any other questions or comments for Joni now? If not, all in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you, Joni. We'll talk to you again. Appreciate your report. Okay, item 5.1, the Stratford Tourist Alliance. And if I could have a motion that the presentation by Zach Cribble and Leanne Niemeyer of the September 2020 update be heard. Moved by Councillor Beattie. All in favor? If you're there, Zach, welcome aboard.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to present. As some of you may know, I am almost reaching the 3-month mark in this position. And so I'm a little bit wet behind the ears. This is my first presentation to this body. But I do want to highlight several key differences from when you last received a presentation on behalf of STA and the board. And Leanne Niemeyer is with me to answer any questions from a board perspective at the tail end of this presentation. So the budget obviously went under some major changes this year when COVID hit, and a lot of the revenues that affect tourism also affected STA. And we did receive a substantial grant from the Regional Relief and Recovery Fund. And you'll notice on page 3 of the presentation, there is a pie chart which shows how this was allocated. The total grant was in the amount of $382,000. There is a 10% holdback, and the rules are that this money had to be spent in 2020 calendar year. This allowed us to hire our full complement of staff back. It also allowed us to refund and return membership fees to about 200 tourism operators and small businesses throughout the city. And it supplied quite a substantial amount of money for us to market and advertise. And as Joni and Councillor Clifford had been discussing previously, it is a delicate dance in terms of what level of visitation is appropriate, and it is a bit of a moving target. So I can answer that question a little bit from STA's perspective. We've been focused on hyper-local tourism, especially in the early days of while things were reopening. And then we slowly moved into the region, mostly Kitchener-Waterloo and London area, which we are still active. As things improved in the summer, we moved to west of Toronto, and we are starting to claw back from that. So it's very much a moving target in terms of the destination marketing that we do and the locations that we do it in to make sure that this is done in a safe way. So some highlights to the budget that was altered on page 4. I've listed the major ones. So we actually didn't collect, we stopped collecting membership fees partway through the year when the pandemic hit. And as mentioned, through the grant, we are refunding $32,000 of member fees back into the hands of small businesses. We also collected about $25,000 in culinary guide ad deposits. That guide never got printed, and as it's something that we are not actually producing this year for obvious reasons, all of those monies are being returned as well. The Stratford Tourism Supplement, we're projecting that it'll be down by about 80%, so around $13,000 over the year. It is normally between $90,000 and $100,000. So that gives you some flavor for some of the impacts that, that STA received on the revenue side. The grant we've already gone over. We were able to increase substantially student staff grants about twice as much as we had budgeted in previous years, around $23,000. And the nature of this year, students will actually be continuing to work part-time at STA right through until the end of December. And the grant programs were made quite flexible this year to be accommodating. On the expense side, you'll see a huge increase in terms of our fall and winter advertising budget from originally $20,000 up to $104,000. And the summer and road trips campaign, some of which was in partnership with the provincial government. I'll talk to a little bit in this presentation, but it came in at $140,000. We did have a reduced printing cost for the culinary guide, as I've already discussed. And we did have a one-time unexpected expense due to retirement, which was in the amount of $35,000. So on page 5 of the presentation, for 2020, we are in excellent shape, and that is due specifically to that grant that was received. The forecast for 2021, we are preparing 3 different scenarios. So one is no additional revenue sources, which would have been similar to this year without the grant, but with stable city funding. And the next is with some limited revenue. And the final, which we feel is the most likely, is limited revenue streams plus some shape of federal provincial grant support. Probably not to the extent of this year, but we do feel that it's quite likely that tourism and destination marketing organizations will be continued to be supported through 2021, given that it's likely to be quite a challenging year for tourism. So if I can speak to some of the achievements in 2020 quickly, from a destination marketing standpoint, then a management standpoint, and finally a development standpoint. I won't go through all of these numbers for our summer campaign, but you'll see from page 7 onwards that it was a very substantial campaign. As mentioned, we were hyper local and regional, so within 1 hour radius of Stratford. And we did things that normally STA doesn't do or can't afford. Television ads, we were on radio, we were on every form of media. It really was pretty comprehensive, but it was to our region in order to be safe and prudent about visitors that we're inviting here. So some of the results, I won't go through in the interest of time, but they're there for you to look at. The campaign is wrapping up this week for summer, and then we'll be moving into fall. But we had very impressive numbers, and I think that we can all agree that Stratford did an excellent job this summer of bringing in a healthy, viable amount of tourism to help keep our businesses afloat. And did so in a safe and prudent manner. So talking about destination management, we're doing a necessary shift over at STA to focus on visitor experience and things that come out of the pandemic that we weren't expecting. So one quick example, and you'll see that on page 11 in the graphic, there's a map that STA created that shows every single restaurant in Stratford that was actually open. So when visitors started to come and the tourism was reopening, Google wasn't correct, TripAdvisor wasn't correct, and there was a lot of confusion over what restaurants were open, who had takeout, et cetera, and who had a patio eventually. And we wanted to answer those questions because we were getting them over at Stratford Tourism Alliance. Similar for accommodations. You know, we have usually well over 150 accommodators in total, and during this time we had only 40. So helping to answer those questions and be very responsive in the moment was the challenge from a digital servicing and in-person servicing. We reopened our office, and we are seeing a significant number of visitors coming through and answering questions and pointing to activities. We also, as you probably have seen quite a bit, have a welcome hut that is STA staffed and volunteer staffed at the Alfresco location by Market Square. In terms of destination development, the Chocolate Trail and upcoming Christmas Trail are actually very popular this year because there's less of other activities happening. I can share that with the Chocolate Trail, we've sold more so far to date this month in September than we did in all of September last year. So that is bringing visitors something to do and to actively contribute to some economic recovery by sending them into our local retailers and restaurants. Stratford Alfresco, I won't dwell on, but this has been an extremely successful collaboration. And I tip my hat, as was mentioned earlier, to Joni Gerber and all the members of the task force for reacting quickly and making this a big success. The last project that I'd like to talk about briefly is Lights on Stratford, which also came out of the task force and is a 3-month light festival that is scheduled for this winter starting mid-November. STA is the lead organization, And we're quite excited by this. As I said to someone earlier today, light is a beacon of hope and joy. And that is, I think, something Stratford will need this winter. This is an outdoor event. It was designed to be flexible and to the realities of the day in terms of health and safety, in terms of crowd management, and in terms of gathering size. So we're working very closely with the City Initiatives team, the city, and all of our partners to make sure that this is going to be a safe event, and hopefully the conditions will be such that it'll also really impact economic recovery from a tourism standpoint. But I will say that it is Stratford people that are actually creating this festival. So we've been hiring a lot of professionals from Stratford Festival that are not working at the moment. They are creating a lot of these light sculptures and displays and helping us set this up. So it's economic recovery at its best, because along the path, there are various ways that we are helping in terms of actually having dollars brought to local residents and workers. And with that, through the chair, I would be happy to entertain any questions.
Martin.
Thank you, Zach, and thank you. Please extend my thanks to your team. A question for you with regards, you talked earlier about tourism traffic, and you mentioned the Chocolate Trail and other activities, tourism activities. Is there any way of telling how much of that tourism is from city residents and how much is from residents that we've pursued through advertising? Any way of telling how that's divided out?
In terms of our trails, it is largely from folks who are not Stratford residents. Okay. There is some, but the majority is from largely Kitchener-Waterloo and London, and that makes perfect sense. That's where we're advertising that this is available. There is activity from GTA, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I would assume that this would be fairly correct. Around 10 to 15% local, as in Stratford resident, and out of the 85%, 2/3 are regional, Kitchener-Waterloo to London.
Graham. Your sound's off, Graham.
Okay, thank you for that, Zach. On that topic, I had an al fresco meal at a local restaurant, spoke to the server and asked about how was business and busy and so on and so forth. And I also asked the question about, are they locals or are they out of towners? And he says the vast majority on that particular day were not locals, let's put it that way. Now, the questions that I would have for Zach would be, I've got two questions actually. How does Stratford compare this summer in relation to visitors and so on and so forth, compared to other communities within Ontario? Is there a comparison there, or do you have any evidence of that?
There is no hard data, and I do hope that we can establish that at a provincial level to look at similar destinations and have hard data about the impact and the recovery initiatives and what the differences are between different destinations. I can share with you that I'm on calls weekly with other destinations. Sometimes it's almost province-wide, so there's many. And Stratford is punching way above its weight in terms of visitation, in terms of how it's doing economically. So we will be working on getting some hard data and talking to some local restaurateurs, some local retailers, and accommodators, which I think is the hardest hit out of everyone across the province. And then working with some other partner destinations to compare notes and to see what happened. But I can tell you that Stratford is the envy of a lot of other destinations because of the speed at which the task force moved and the amount of marketing that occurred in the region, and our luck in terms of our proximity to urban centers that are right close by.
Yeah, and I got a second question. It's relating to this past summer, and it was fairly evident to me, anyways, as I drove through town and walked and biked and so on and so forth, that there were quite a number of visitors to our city during the summer months, both uptown, around the river, and all over the place. And I know there's some concerns about bringing people from outside and what they may bring with them. But is there any evidence that you're aware of whatsoever that any COVID matters in Stratford and surrounding areas were traced back and related to people who came into the area and gave it to us? Is there anything that you know of in that regard?
There is not. There's not a single case that I'm aware of that came in from that was sourced from a visitor. I think Stratford, and especially Stratford tourism operators, can feel very proud of how they've handled this. And by and large, by all accounts, visitors are quite respectful of what's expected of them and the rules and regulations. And we see that, we staff Stratford al fresco, and we have, several hundred people there on a busy day with zero issues. And in fact, a lot of feedback from visitors on how well and how we've handled it and how well we've set things up, and how safe that they do feel. So I think visitors by and large respect that, and that's why we've seen no issues to date.
Yeah, thank you. And I would note that, yes, we have to be vigilant and we have to keep this high level of protocol going throughout the winter months as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Bunting. Councillor Gaffney.
To be fair to Zach and the other people that are in that industry, if we want to ask that question, we should be asking Dr. Marion Clausen that question, because Zach would not especially have the same information. So if we want to get a more fulsome answer to that question, we should go to the source of the answer. Thanks.
Thanks. Zach, I was going to ask you about the lights on Stratford. I'm quite excited about that, by the way. I know in Niagara Falls, they have a light display, and I'm in Niagara Falls periodically, and Niagara on the lake too. But is it going to be a trail, or is it going to be just lights? Can you illuminate what's going to happen?
I will try to do so very briefly. So Lights on Stratford, at its core and its spirit is economic recovery. So as I mentioned, we are working with people. It's a made in Stratford solution, and it would only ever happen in Stratford, and it will be unique to Stratford. It'll be unique in a few ways from other light festivals. So we have 4 main locations, and then sort of a 5th distributed location. We have Market Square, and in Market Square, we will have a combination of Stratford created medium to large sized light sculptures, and we will also have projections on City Hall. I'm quite excited for one particular feature at Market Square, whereby we are going to do a pre-dawn show on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. This will be from 7:30 to 8 is the current schedule, and this will involve a giant rising sun coming out of Market Square, moving up City Hall, and eventually to the cupola to meet the dawn. This is highly unusual. I'm not aware of any other light festivals that do this. Part of the rationale for doing some pre-dawn programming is to try and help encourage overnight. So our accommodators typically are very, very quiet during the winter season, but they've been very quiet since COVID hit. So by programming both at night and in the morning, we will have a more fulsome experience for people, including local residents, to enjoy. Moving to the next location, which is Shakespearean Gardens, that we are doing an installation where there'll be thousands of white fiber optic lights down the 300-foot path along Shakespearean Gardens. There will be a motion aspect to that, so it's interactive. It's going to be one way, and as people experience that, the motion sets off colored light that follows you and reacts as you go through. and the chimney bird tower will greet you with a light experience that goes up it as well. So that's a very interactive one. In terms of Tom Patterson Island, that will be dramatically lit up, and for a variety of reasons, including health and safety and crowd control, we will limit public access to the island itself, but that can be enjoyed either by car or by the banks of the river and the pathways on either side for maximum distribution of traffic. Tom Patterson Theatre will also have a similar light display on the inside that will be able to be enjoyed from a distance. So as you can see, we're trying to be very flexible with health and safety and the realities of COVID in programming this festival. Another very unique aspect is that we'll be working with 20 to 25 downtown retailers to professionally light up their windows with projectors and light designers from the festival. And that will be distributed through the downtown core at various locations. So in all, there's 3 months of activities. It will, all of it will be on for the weekends, and there'll be limited aspects that will be on during the week. And Monday will be a pause day, so we can do maintenance and rest and recover. And we are going to be using the snowflake LED lights to act as a wayfinding vehicle to connect these 4 sites, since it is a bit of a stroll to get through them. So to answer your question, it will be sort of a walking tour, but those are the 5 main elements. And to find the elements, if you're visiting town, you simply follow the snowflake LED stars that will be on the lamppost connecting these sites together.
Great, that sounds exciting. Any other questions for Zach or his assistant here today? If not, if I could have a motion that the presentation by Zach and Leanne of that it be received for information. Moved by Graham. Any other questions or comments? All in favor? Thank you for coming up, and we appreciate the report. It sounds exciting.
Thank you very much.
Item 6.1 is the financial statement for Festival Hydro Inc. second quarter ending June 30th. And could I have a motion that the presentation by Kelly McCann and Scott Hoffman regarding the Festival Hydro's second quarter update be heard? Moved by Councillor Beatty. All in favor? Welcome.
Thank you, and I apologize. My camera is still not working, but I actually think the host has set something up so my camera won't work. So anyways, I'm going to just continue on. So I'm going to start with Festival Hydro. So this is the end of June 30th, 2020. Our, oh, here we go. Sorry, it looks like my video is going to work now, or try to work. I will continue on. Net income for this period is $772,000, which is $130,000 below our year-to-date budget. I'm going to take a look first at the balance sheet and highlight a couple of items as they relate to how we're operating right now and specific to COVID. So our accounts receivable balance is significantly greater than it was in June 2019. As indicated in the commentary, a lot of this is because of the fact that we're accruing something that wasn't being accrued in 2019. We, however, are monitoring our receivables daily because they are increasing gradually through the moratorium period. So essentially we have not, the moratorium disallows us from cutting customers or disconnecting customers for non-pay, and so through this time frame we generally do see our accounts receivable increase. However, that time frame has been extended this year, was extended to the end of July, so that creep will continue for a little bit longer. The amount due from Festival Hydro Services Inc. has also increased significantly. However, that was one capital purchase that was made in Festival Hydro Services Inc., which we will be recovering in the year. So we'll see that get paid down again by the end of the year. For the regulatory assets, I just want to highlight that the Ontario Energy Board has approved a variance account where we can capture costs, incremental costs that are specifically related to COVID. They have not given any specific information as to how to calculate things like lost distribution revenue. So we haven't actually booked those entries at this point in time. However, things that are truly incremental to COVID that are easily identifiable, such as additional technology, supplies, etc. Those are all being booked into the variance account at this point in time. Moving on to the income statement. So to the end of June, our revenue is $147,000 below budget. This is the result mainly of our small commercial and large commercial customers coming in much lower than budget. We can see from the report 40% up to 47% below budget in the month of May. We do see some pickup happening for the larger commercial customers in June, July, and potentially August. We're working on our August statements at the moment. We expect to see that trend continue, which is a good sign. Our other revenue is also below budget, and that is mainly due to less billable work being performed in the second quarter due to COVID. On the cost side of things, so total controllable costs are only $1,000 greater than budget. When you split this up, operating and maintenance are running about $49,000 over budget to the end of Q2. This is a function of overhead costs, so some payroll burden costs related to unplanned sick leave, and also just due to the split of our operations labor between capital, billable, and maintenance. We're seeing more hit the maintenance line as we weren't able to do billable work as planned and had reduced some of our capital work at the peak of COVID. On the admin side, our expenses are running $47,000 below budget to the end of June, and that was due to a lower labor cost related to the CEO vacancy, in addition to lower contract labor costs as it related to projects that had to be delayed due to COVID, so delayed or pushed into 2021. This is offset by an unbudgeted cost for the executive search firm relating to the CEO vacancy. And the only other item I want to highlight on Festival Hydro is a timing difference. It relates to our LEAP program, which is Low Energy Assistance Program. We actually made the decision in 2020 to increase that by 50%. So the additional amount is going to go into a variance account. However, it's going to mean that our customers have more funds and that will enable to support them through this time. So that has been paid out to our service provider, and those funds are starting to be distributed now. And that is my report for Festival Hydro to the end of June.
Okay, are there any questions on Festival Hydro? Kelly, I was going to ask you, how is it going to affect the city of Stratford as far as like interest? I'm sure it'll be paid, but dividends, could you help us with that? How, with our income being down, what effect that may have on the city?
Sure. Actually, our board of directors has passed a resolution to defer the dividends. So we paid our Q1 quarterly dividends, but we have deferred Q2, and we are meeting again in October to review our projections for the year. And there will be another discussion with the board of directors in regards to Q3 dividends, as well as looking forward into 2021 as we go through our budget process. So at this point, we are still deferring the dividend until another discussion can be had with our board of directors, but we are projecting monthly at this point. So when we get our monthly actuals in, we will revise our projections for the year so that we can get a better sense of how we think we're going to end the year. There are still a number of variables in the projections which are really difficult to nail down. Main one being our distribution revenue, in that we see some uptake in the commercial revenue that we're getting. However, if a second wave comes in, who's to say what the revenue is going to end up looking like? So still a lot of variables to consider, but with every month of actuals we get in, we can refine that projection process a little bit further.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments on this first report? If not, could I have a motion that the Festival Hydro Inc. financial statements and commentary for the period ending June 30th, 2020 be received for information? Moved by Councillor Ritzma, All in favor? That's unanimous. We'll go on to item 7.1, the Rhizome report.
So Rhizome's net income for the period ending June 30th was $78,000, which is $78,000 ahead of budget. On the balance sheet, I will just highlight two items. So our AR was higher than the Q2 2019 balance, and our capital assets additions were $557,000 to the end of Q2. This is the result of the purchase of the DSRC equipment, which was an unbudgeted item, however, is being funded fully through AVEN. So we will see that come into Rhizome as a capital contribution. We have received post Q2 our first payment, and we'll receive another payment in November, and that relates back to the intercompany debt in Festival Hydro Inc. and how it will get paid down as well. On the income statement, so the revenues are $43,000 lower than budget in Q2, and this is a result of consulting revenue. First, our IT consulting, those resources have been working on Rhizome projects more heavily in the first half of the year. This may be a timing difference. We may see that pick up before the end of the year. And in addition, we'd also budgeted for a conservation consulting revenue, and that conservation resource left the company in February. And so that revenue is no longer coming into the organization. On the expense side, we're running $120,000 below budget. This is a result of a number of things that I've listed in the report. And there are some items from an operational perspective that may be timing. So I've listed at the bottom, there's some reactionary fiber maintenance costs that are currently running $7,000 over budget relating to two squirrel chews through fiber lines. Our server building maintenance is actually running lower than budget, and to the end of June, Wi-Fi maintenance was running $17,000 below budget. So this all relates to our overall operating expenses running under budget and essentially net income coming in higher than budget to the end of Q2.
Okay, thanks. Any questions or comments from our subcommittee on this today? I was going to ask on that 120,000 under expense, and you talked about it a bit, is it going to be spent or is it going to be like a surplus, do you think? Or
there will definitely be some permanent differences between budget and actual. So we had some outside service fees that were budgeted that were actually, that we know now will not recur in 2020. Those will be permanent budget to actual differences on the plus side for us. Some of the fiber and Wi-Fi maintenance, I mean, we're hopeful that we'll be able to remain running below budget on Wi-Fi maintenance. Again, that's a function of, a lot of it is reactionary. So it depends on, what happens through the rest of the year in terms of weather incidents and things like that, or pole hits, etc., where some of our equipment might need to be replaced or fixed. So it's going to be a combination to answer your question. Some of it will be permanent.
thank you. Any other questions from the committee? Yeah, Martin.
I would certainly move the staff recommendation with regards to Rhizome be received. Just with regards to was there a motion to hear the report? Because I would make that motion as well.
No, I forgot that, Martin. Thank you. I'm glad you keep me on my toes here.
No, if I could do both, then I know.
Please. No, I'll let you do both. It'll be a double.
Yeah, I will do both, and then we're covered in the minutes. So
thank you. I'll call the question. All in favor for both. Thank you. And yeah, okay, Kelly and Scott, we appreciate you coming up, and we'll hearing from you again soon.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks, Kelly.
Bye, everyone.
Bye now.
Thank you.
Item 8, there is no advisory committee outside board minutes provided at this time. And I was just going to ask, is there any other item? We haven't got together for a long time. Is there anything else anyone wants to ask our acting director? Any questions? I have a quick one. I was reading about this development charges that the change the province is making on this 4%. I don't expect an answer right now, but in the future, like, is that going to affect us adversely on development charges? And if we could have a report, but if you want to talk about it now briefly, I wouldn't mind.
I can't really answer that question. I know that the people that do our development charge studies are looking into it, and hopefully they'll have some advice for us in the next little while. But yes, it's the parkland that's going up to 4%, I believe.
Right, right. I didn't understand it completely, but there was a report on in one of our from AMO, I think it was. Anything else anyone else has? If not, our next Finance and Labor Relations Subcommittee meeting is October 20th, and I would accept a motion. I'll remember this one, Martin, to adjourn. By Councillor Gaffney, all in favor. Thank you very much, guys. We'll see you soon again.
Thank you,
Talk to you
Tom.
later.